from that moment of, I'm not sure if this is what I want to do. This is my background, but it hasn't panned out, to just a very firm, no, this is it. Let's make it happen. And if it didn't happen for, one interview, I'm committed. So it's not like, it's not a big deal. I don't have to be worried
Yes.
about that interview. This is what I want to do, and it's going to happen.
Hi, and welcome back to Answer the Call podcast. I am pumped to share this story. This has been a long time coming, as I'm sure our guest, Ben, feels as well. We'll get into more of why it was a long time coming, but I will have Ben just introduce himself right away and say hello to everyone. So, Ben, can you tell us, we're going to jump in right away, what your job was before and what you're doing now, and also say hello.
Yeah. So hello. My title before was a data analyst. There were different flavors to that depending on which department I was shelled underneath. And at one point, they actually weren't sure what to use. And so data guru was an official
Oh,
title for about 24 hours. So
I like
um,
that.
a little messy, but easiest way to understand it would just be data analyst.
Mm-hmm.
And now I am working as a data scientist, which was kind of always my goal, and just took a interesting path to get there, with Audrey very heavily involved.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the path is interesting, and like I said, I'm pumped to kind of lay out how all this played out. And I won't keep everyone on the hook, and obviously probably will include part of this in the title. Ben is going to end up, or he has ended up, with a role that was created specifically for him, which is literally the dream. So we'll start back to where you were when you were in that data analyst position, kind of the mindset that you were in, or what was going on that had you actually seek out career coaching in the first place.
Yeah. So going back, I'm going to go back even further than
Mm-hmm.
just this past role, because it really is kind of a history of more of the same. So I went to grad school, and came out wanting to do data science, and found myself in a role that was working with lawyers and auditors, which uh, they don't typically know what data science is. Um, and trying to kind of bring them up to speed on some stuff, with the goal of getting into the heavier machine learning AI type of stuff that I had learned about and practiced with my degree. Well, that didn't quite pan out as well as I would have thought. The leadership changed, and so the vision changed, and I was left without a lot of inroads to get to that point. And then I started with this new company, the one that I'm currently at, and started off as a data analyst. Again, I can't remember what the title was exactly because it's changed a little. But started off as a data analyst, with the promise of, hey, yeah, we'll cover some bases, some basic reporting structure type of things, and then in a little bit of time, we'll allow you to get into what you want to do, which is more the machine learning kind of stuff, and we can, that can be a career path that we kind of create on the fly, not the most Fortune 500 setup. So that's kind of where I had come from. And the current role that I had found myself in was in that data analyst position, but going through a couple different departmental changes where that, hey, we'll get to it eventually, was the exact same as the first job. And then this new position, with each department, it was, oh, we'll eventually get to that. We'll eventually get to that. We'll eventually get to that, with not a lot of actually getting to it.
Mm, hmm. Yeah, I think that's relatable to a lot of people. Like this kind of, they keep something dangling in front of you, and I don't even want to say that as a, you know, negative thing to these companies. It's just if it's not a priority, it's not a priority. Their priorities are change and don't always look like how they might have been promised or might have alluded to.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in this new company. I've been here for about 3 years now, and I've had as many bosses. So
Yeah.
that's been part of the thing, is the fact that in three different departments, I should say. So that's been part of the issue, is just, it's like, okay, well, eventually needs two parties to happen a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. So, and before we even go further, could you break down for those of us listening who might not know exactly the difference between data analyst and data scientist? Can you break that down a little bit?
um, yes and no. Um, that was one of the things that is a bit challenging to maybe explain. The I have an infographic about it, but it's
Hmm.
probably tough to go over a podcast. But there's different types of data work. There's engineering, architecture, science, analyst, and there's different skill sets or levels of skill sets within each of those. So some people may be better at one area versus the other. So think one may be better at visualization, while another might be better at modeling. So there's different viewpoints on who should be good at what, and they're all a little bit ambiguous. And if you read any job title out there with data scientist in it, every single one of them will probably have a slightly different definition.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that I like to look at it is as a combination between a practical business, a data management, um, and data kind of reporting, with a scientific underlining of research and hypotheses and testing and thinking through, again, from what can we do for the business through the system with the creativity of data or structure or reporting. I don't know if that
Yeah.
helps or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And the creativity is what I really wanted to touch on because that was something that from very first conversations we had together, it was clear like you are very creative and that was important to you to use in your job. So how does that come into play in your job now?
Yeah. Well, the role that I'm in now was specifically created for me because I went through the process. We can get to, I'm sure, some of
Yeah.
this through the questions, but um, it came through me saying there's a different way or a better way to me of doing some of this. Historically, it had been a lot of, hey, can you give me this number or this stat, this figure, or this visual, or show me this thing, that type of deal. And I wanted to explore and say, okay, well, what if we did this, or how can we do that? And so, I mean, even today, was talking through. We were looking at some data that I'm trying to pull in of just economic indicators like consumer sentiment. And I thought, well, man, wouldn't it be cool if if someone's looking at a month of our data and they click on it and they see what the sentiment was, could we pull in like news reports or things like, what happened this month or whatever, so to give historical context to why we're seeing some of these bland and boring GDP type numbers that are impacting our model. So I thought, that'll be cool. And so I get to actually now, because
Mm.
I'm have this freedom to be creative, I'm starting to look through, which websites should I scrape or do this or that, or having to figure out the legal stuff too. But it's fun. It feels like there's a lot of roadway that I didn't know was there even this morning.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like your data analyst role, data guru role was more transactional, while
Mm-hmm.
this role gets to be more embedded in the transformational aspect of the company. Like, how do we change the way that we do things rather than just, oh, here's a number, here's what it says, here's what it means. Does that resonate?
Yeah, yeah. Um, there's different. I mean, there still is. Hey, we need to figure this thing out. Give
Mm-hmm.
us X, Y, Z. But I can at least add some type of a flair to it. I feel like now that got the freedom to kind of add in different things that I think are useful, functional, and show statistical use, and not just anecdotal, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I do want to get into the nitty gritty of how you actually got this job because from where where we were in your process was you wanted to do data scientists. We had figured that out, gotten your resume built up and everything, but were you having trouble finding jobs that really were a good fit? Is that right?
Yeah. So part of it is kind of a use it or lose it mentality. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like same thing with you know coding. Languages are the same as essentially any other language. Um, and I thought about this earlier, but in high school, I would go to Mexico and on mission trips, and we would, kind of get away from our translators. And at that point, I would become the pseudo translator because we had been there for a couple of days or a week or so, and I felt very confident. And now, if you ask me to speak Spanish at all, I can't. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a use it or lose it type of thing, and that's how I felt about some of the hard skills for data science. Was that we'll eventually get to it mentality that I had been kind of living in. I hadn't been really sharpening those skills, keeping those up to date, and so I felt like when I was looking around, I felt very inferior from a hard skill set position. So that's kind of the first step, I would say, whenever we started to, after we had identified, like, yes, this is what I want to do. This is still what I want to do. Um, how do we do it? That was kind of my biggest hurdle, I feel like, of just self doubt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how'd you handle that?
Yeah. So that kind of segues into how this position was essentially created. Was I went to another new department and um, decided, you know what, I'm going to spend some time working on something that I think is actually useful outside of the task list type of thing. I'm going to start working on this because I want to take this as a project to my company so that I can then go to an interview and say, hey, look, my skills aren't that rusty. I just did this
Mhm.
kind of a thing. So uh, I think my boss at the time had said he thought there was like a 3% chance that it would have done anything besides,
What?
hit someone's inbox and go away. And I thought, you know what, that's cool.
So
I'd
you're
kind of filled
telling
him
me there's a
in.
chance.
Yeah, I'd filled him in like a little later down the line. He said, yeah, keep doing that, but don't tell anyone. I don't think there's a great chance it'll work out.
Mm.
And so it's like, okay, well, the goal was still to just, create this and be able to put it on a resume and say, you know, the Mexico thing, right? Like, if you put me in the role, I did this after a month or whatever. You put me in the role for 6 months, and I'll be speaking that language fluently again, and kind of thing. So that
Yeah.
was the goal. It just turned out differently than I could have imagined.
Yeah, absolutely. And you, right now, this is such a key point. So I want to kind of reiterate what you just said. Um, more generally. You were applying for jobs, trying to get into interviews, feeling like you really couldn't speak to the skills that they needed you to have. So you looked around at the opportunities right around you within your current job to work on those skills, to be more credible in these interviews and to be able to sell yourself better in these interviews. Right?
Yeah, that was the 10-second version of the 2 minute
Yeah.
spiel that I just rambled on for. But
No, your details were great. And the reason that I say that generally is because this is not unique to the position that you were in. This is something that anybody can do at their job. And I hear it so often, people scared of these career pivots because they don't have the exact experience that the new job might be looking for. And I mean, there's so many layers to that. And I'm speaking very vaguely right now, but the quickest way to get around that is to just get the experience in your current job. Oh, you want to be a project manager? Do project manager work at your current job, of course, while still honoring your employer and doing what you are paid to be doing. But it can pay off big time if you just put in that extra effort. A lot of people kind of give up on I see it, people give up on there's nothing here for me anymore. There's nothing that I can do. I got to find it all somewhere else. And there's so much value in just taking a new perspective and really digging in, like, what can I do here to build myself up to be more impressive in an interview and more authentically impressive in an interview as well. So I think you just did that so well and so picture perfect in this situation. And like I said, it paid off big time. So you're working on this project on the side. You're currently working with about 3% chance that it's going to actually happen. How'd you make it happen?
Prayed a lot. I mean,
Yes, amen. Amen.
um, prayed before I heard the 3% and prayed harder afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the the goal wasn't to have that 3% be where I'm at today. That's
Yeah.
it's a great story. I'm glad to tell it, but the goal was to just take that and say, hey, I did this thing, but my company wasn't ready for it, or they didn't want to allow for this to be, um, the method that we go through or whatever. So that's why that's my reason for leaving the company, is because
Mm-hmm.
I did try out this thing and they weren't ready to accept it or move that direction. So I am. I mean, I've done work with a career coach. I know what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever they want, that's fine. But um, if they won't let me, then I have to leave. Um,
Yeah.
but like you said, exhausted. Um, you know, exhausted that resource kind of a thing, and it
Mm-hmm.
happened to work out. I feel like I'm. You should have the thing on the title too that says, past performance doesn't guarantee results, whatever the like
Mm-hmm.
investing disclaimer
Mm-hmm.
is, because
Yeah.
3% is, I mean, maybe that was generous, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that's a beautiful picture of faithfulness where you showed up, you did the work, you went above and beyond, and you weren't expecting God to bless it in the way that He did, of like, oh, making this turn into an amazing job opportunity for me. But you still showed up and did the work, and you did that excellently, and found so much favor in that, and so much more blessings than we could have imagined. So you're working on this project, and it starts turning into a potential job opportunity. Um, what what was that like? What were you starting to feel? Were you feeling resistant about staying because you had built up so much? Like, I am leaving this company. Did that play into this at all?
Not really. I don't. I felt like I was always frustrated with the situation, but there was nothing. And just because I laid out, it was just the situation just kind of kept shifting ever so
Mm-hmm.
slightly and kind of getting away. But once it started to feel a little bit more in control or more long term, it felt like, you know, I had no animosity towards anyone. Didn't have to leave. I just wanted to make sure that I was doing something that got me out of bed in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
made me happy to do. So if that was on the table, um, and I've talked about this with my wife. I said, that's a great story, and I'm happy to talk to it with you, obviously. But if I'm here for another 6 months to, I don't know, I said 60 years, but I'm getting up there, so wouldn't work. But if I'm here for a long time, that's still a great story of being able to say, I built this thing or did this thing out of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so um, that was something that kind of kept me excited and kept me honestly more locked into kind of seeing it through when I started to see some dominoes fall. Then and I think I told you at one point, I was like, yeah, I'm not really applying to jobs right now. Like, I'm
Yeah.
focusing on this thing because I think it could, be a very, very long job application. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. You went all in on it and decided to see where it led. And it's always interesting from the career coach perspective of like, oh, you're not applying to jobs? Hmm. Okay. But I knew what you were doing and was happy to support you through that. And I'm just amazed at what it turned into. So what did you see, like, of what was the change from your company starting to be like, oh, we actually need you in this role. We need you in a data scientist role to be able to run this.
Um, the the change kind of came with a general change in the company, moving
Mm-hmm.
towards a different system that had more capability, and at the same time trying to kind of create this role. And as I'm sure anyone in any corporate role knows, there's always, multiple people involved with any type of new job. And so there was a lot of different um, budget or head count or different things that people were talking about that kind of kicked the can down the road a little bit. But, you know, fairly early on, um, they had started to kind of set up some like MVP project with like Microsoft folks to be able to kind of get what I had done on the real world equivalent of a notepad project and get that into a more structured system that could be more repeatable. Because what I had done was, again, kind of for me. So I had done it very low code, very low um, system, just on notebooks, kind of a thing. And so they had started kind of push towards getting me into a different system, um, which at that point I kind of knew, okay, well, if they're spending time on anything to get someone built up and working on a system, hopefully they want to build this out. And then they came with a actual, hey, we're trying to create this job, stick around, kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we knew you, through some candid conversations, we knew you did this because you were looking to do more of this. And I know we may not be moving the same speed, but we are moving towards the same goal.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was just a lot of that back and forth. And I think I told you that after about 9 months of some of that, um, after about 9 hours, they're like, hey, here's the job. Forget
Yeah.
the HR questions. Like, we're good. You start Monday, and it was on Thursday at like 4. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I want to get to that because that was just amazing how it all came together. Um, but tell me, so you've been at this company for a long time. When you were there in the beginning, felt like they were kind of dangling this carrot in front of you of like, oh, it'll change, or whatever. And now they're telling you, okay, just be patient with us. We are going to have this available for you. What? How did you trust? How'd you trust that this time?
I think because I could tell that they had finally seen the value.
Mm.
Um,
Oh.
so beforehand, it may have been people that had an idea of this, um, but they didn't have a great grasp of it. Um, and to put it in a little bit of context, the first person who I worked for who hired me at this company, um, at one point during a demo that one of the same Microsoft guys that we worked with on our thing
Huh.
gave to a different part of the company, like, man, why do we need a data scientist at all? We can just have this AI thing do it. And when that got back to me through the grapevine of things, it was like, oh, yeah, I don't think he ever would have seen the value because he doesn't also see the messy side of the messy side of the data, right? He sees the great clean picture and has a great strategic vision for business, but I don't know, if he can ask something from an AI, then great, but if he asked an AI about any of our data, it would just give him an error because ours is messy or we don't have a very robust system, so we have to build it out and work. Again, some of that data scientist is not just the business or the even the machine learning kind of algorithms or fine tuning those. It's also just, well, I'd say probably 90% of just working with messy product or messy information and trying to get that into a spot that's clean to be usable.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think the vision was fully grasped, even though it was kind of, oh yeah, data science is great, conceptually. But once I started to put some like, hey, here's a percentage increase, decrease based on an algorithm type of thing, um, I think that's when they're like, oh, okay, this is tangible, this is real, this is actionable, um, and we need to be doing more of this kind of a thing instead of a ethereal. Eventually, we should do something like this kind of a thing. I don't know if that
Oh, Ben, you
fully
just
tracked or not.
said so many good things. Like the what you did was show value, and you became undeniable. You're like, oh, I'm not just talking about this right now. Like, this is actually what it will look like. This is how much time it'll save you. That's a huge thing in my tech sales days, was always just talking about, oh, this is going to save you time. This is going to save you time. This is going to save you money. Invest in this now. It'll save you all these things. And that's what you did. You were like, it'll save us headache. I almost said heartache. Maybe heartache too. um, and you didn't just talk about it, you demonstrated it. And I think that's a huge thing for people to take away, because people are all talk. A lot of people are all talk, and it even just goes back to how you were preparing for your interviews. You wanted to have this project so you could demonstrate in your interviews, here's how I can tangibly be of service and of value to your company. And that's ultimately what moved the needle on this within your own organization. So I think that's a really valuable thing to take away from this, and just that idea of being undeniable. Like, can I be doing more here? Can I be making something more tangible? Can I be helping more people? How do I, what is it, like the dress for the job you have? No,
Yeah,
no, dress for
just
the
for the
job
job
you
you
want,
want.
not the job
Yeah,
you have.
yeah,
Act for the job that you want, or do the job you want, not the job you, well, actually, let me take that back. And the job you have, please be honoring
yeah,
to your employers. Do both for a little bit and it'll pay off.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean that just it goes kind of towards what we talked about in the beginning of the conversation of like it was task taking almost type of
Mm-hmm.
data analyst. And it's like, okay, taking that to an interview, be like, what have you done for your company? It's like, well, I can tell you how many sprints I got finished at 100% of like the task board being complete, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you want to know about what these things were because I don't care about what they were. Like, so
Mm-hmm.
let's do a project that I can enjoy and they can enjoy, and
Yeah.
in the middle of the process, my company I think saw the value, but again, that was a 3% chance and never the intent.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and I do want to get into the, again, a little bit more of the nitty gritty of how this actually happened, because I think people hear this like, oh, company create a job for you, um, and they get a little lost in the details. So they you have to wait because there's just stuff going on behind the scenes, and eventually they have to post the job, right, so that it's a real job. You apply to it, and then what happens? Tell the people what happens after that, Ben.
Yeah, so the bureaucracy is always there. I feel like no matter where you are, but the conversations were always, this is moving forward, or hey, there's a hold up, wait a couple of weeks, kind of a thing. And I try to be patient, but also firm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and eventually, I said, they through some of these candid conversations. I don't know if it was an HR or a finance or I don't know, could have been a government type of thing that said, the economy's not good. So I was like, okay, we're going to hold off on any new postings or something. And I thought, well, it's been 2 weeks. I was patient. And I said, if you guys are you're pausing for the economy, I'm going to start looking for another job. Start looking for another job because of this same economy. And so I think 2 days later, like, yep, we had the conversations. We're moving forward with it. We'll post it. We'll let you know. So they posted it, and they had a bunch of these, HR internal job application questions. And so I told them, hey, I've got a lot I'm working on, so I'll get to this evening, and I'll apply tomorrow morning. So I did. And then the next morning they said, yep, those HR questions didn't matter. We're not going to have you go through the yada yada process. So you can start Monday. And then we got into the negotiations, which um, I don't know if I told you this, but it was almost disorienting
Hmm.
because I had done so much research through the program of like know the value, talk to people. I had done all this because of the kind of bureaucratic process. And I was like, oh, I've got plenty of time to call old, schoolmates and stuff. And so I had all this information in my head, and it didn't fully apply to an internal job from my same company. Um, so it was a little interesting because it wasn't like walking into a off the street job and, hey, I've done all this research, have you done yours, kind of thing. It was a very
Mhm.
interesting dynamic that just, it still was great to do all that research.
Mhm.
But there were a lot of different tactics, I guess I should say, or things that I felt over prepared for. And
Mhm.
so it was disorienting to be like, oh, we're just going to like, you know, see you Monday, like
Yeah.
starting new salary. Like, cool. So it was interesting, but yeah, that was about a 9 hour process after about a 9 month from start of project through all the, stuff. So
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
interesting.
Absolutely. I heard this is not exactly how the phrase went, but something about like God is he does I don't want to say nothing because he's always doing something, but he's like, oh, wait, wait, wait. And then all at once, a lot of times. It's like patience, patience, patience. And then it just comes quicker than maybe you would have imagined or would have thought, especially after all the waiting. Um, so can you, I mean, you got a pretty good pay raise, which is awesome. Can you give us a percentage? Are you comfortable with that? Percentage pay raise?
I guess I don't see
Or,
any problem with it.
oh, me neither.
Yeah, it's always a weird like question. It's like I had to think about it, but I don't care.
Yeah.
Um, it was about a 35% increase.
Heck yeah, it was. I think that's so good for people to hear that you can make, and this is happening so much right now. People staying in their same company, doing another job because the job market is kind of scary. And we can absolutely navigate it. People are landing jobs at new companies. That is still happening. But a lot of people are finding a lot of comfort and value, and especially that comfort of staying at their same company. And then, all your benefits get to be the same and retirement and all that stuff. You don't have to go through all of the changing companies thing. Um, so, all of that to say, you can still stay within the same company, get a new job, and get a pretty dang good pay raise.
Yeah, I will say I don't want to go into too much detail. I think if I had played the hard ball of doing all the things from the called career negotiation thing, it may have worked, but I may not have been in as good of graces as,
Mm.
because I'm in this role already. Like my new boss is kind of my old boss, so like there is tension there that you don't want to create.
Mhm.
Um, but I, based on just the difference, there is a, a market rate that I was like, I could have pushed for a more type of thing, but they had said that the new posting was done so that they could give me an increase that wasn't just based on my old one, but they still did base it on my old one somewhat. And so through this process of, I guess, clarification and knowing this is what I want to do and feeling like, I have value, I've given value, I'm getting value back. But through all this, it's not just about the job. It's more like, okay, well, if I'm, like I said, if I'm here 6 months or 6 years, this is now kind of a career thing. And my goal is to walk into their, thing in a couple years or whatever it is and say, hey, we based this off a percentage from when I started that was, not the same role. And I've done all my research again. Like, you know, let's get to here, or I know my value. I've showed my value for now over this amount of time, kind of thing. We've created this, and then just kind of using that to level up my career, which is just more important with the family, I guess. It
Mhm.
was always just like move up title or move up this, but um, I've never been a make a ton of money type of person. It's always nice, but now it's like, okay, I just saw a figure of like how much it costs to raise a child or whatever. I'm like, okay, I need to be thinking down the road a little further. So
Mhm.
like, this is now a career and not just the next job, which
Wow.
hopefully my explanation flowed. It made sense to me, but
Yeah.
that's because it's my life, my percentages, my numbers. But
Yeah.
um,
No, I think you wrapped it up really nicely with that last statement. It's not just a job, it's a career now. And a career that you can be really confident in, but still be humble and learning. And I'm just so in awe of how God brought it all together for you. So if you were to talk to yourself a year ago, or put yourself in the time frame of deciding, do I do coaching, do I not do coaching, what would you tell Ben at that point?
Yeah, you gave me this one as a softball because you told me about it a little earlier, and I
Mm-hmm.
wrote it down, and I've just been so enthralled with our conversation I haven't thought about it at all. So this will be just off the cuff.
What do you
Uh,
got?
I think I would, obviously I would say it's a good thing to do. um,
Good.
I would say really leaning into the who you are is probably the most important part. Um, I I think we've probably joked about it at some point, but um, probably the most important part of your job is not a knowledge or maybe even a skill thing, but as a soft, you're basically a career counselor, not
Mm-hmm.
coach. Like
Mm-hmm.
you are mental health. You should get the mental health benefit at like your Starbucks or something. Because that was probably the most important piece was understanding who I am through um, God's eyes, but through my own eyes, right? Of having maybe a little bit more confidence than when I
Yeah.
started, um, and just how different it's been from that moment of, you know, I'm not sure if this is what I want to do. This is my background, but it hasn't panned out to just a very firm, no, this is it. Let's make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if it didn't happen for, one interview, I'm committed. So it's not like, it's not a big deal. I don't have to be worried
Yes.
about that interview. This is what I want to do. And it's going to happen. Um,
Yeah.
so
Oh, that is so key, what you just said. And that's why we have our curriculum laid out the way we do, right? We go through that clarity process first, and you really do work through some big questions of who am I? What do I want to do? How does God see me? How do I see myself? And that all plays into your job and it all plays into your career because our job in the best case scenario gets to be an extension of who we are, an extension of our identity. So we first have to kind of have a better understanding of what that identity is. And so starting there, so that when you do get to the job search, and the job search is hard, it's hard for most people out there, the vast majority of people out there, because of disappointment and because of all these different, not getting opportunities, maybe getting opportunity that doesn't feel exciting, whatever it is, there's difficulty in the job search. And the difference with starting with that clarity process is that confidence that you take in the job search, knowing, oh, this doesn't define who I am. It's just an extension of who I am. So you're kind of like recentered in that of, oh, this I get to be more detached. Like, oh, I didn't get the job. That sucks, but it's not going to ruin my entire life. And that helps you show up so much more confidently to all opportunities because you're that detachment is so it just makes you into a really attractive candidate because the people are like, oh, he's got other opportunities. He must be really in high demand. Like, oh, he's got things going on, even if you literally have nothing else going on, but you're acting like it. That is so key. And that's part of this whole the transformation I love to see in people when we get to work together. So thank you for touching on that. I have definitely seen that in you and how you're like, no, this is what I'm called to do. Like, and I'm gonna make it happen. It's just we're gonna see how it plays out. But we're asking and we're seeking and we're knocking. And as the doors potentially remain closed, we're just gonna keep knocking. Maybe we'll throw a shoulder into it and something's gonna open eventually. And it did. So thank you so much, Ben, for sharing your story, for being open to really diving into all of this on the podcast. Like I said, we talk about it a lot of getting a job created at your company for you. So I was glad to have your experience as an example to really dive into what does that actually look like? Like, let's take away the vague language, let's take away kind of the veil that hides what that looks like because it all happens internally and really dive into it. So I think this will be helpful to a lot of people.
hopefully, I whenever I do anything public, I do a Will Ferrell from Old School where
Okay.
he gets up there and he answers a science question. It's a crazy question. He sits back down. He's like, I blacked out. What happened?
Oh, yeah.
That's definitely me through any kind of like someone's going to hear this
Mm-hmm.
perspective. So
Oh, yeah.
hopefully somebody takes something from it.
I think
That's
they
useful.
will. I also black out on these calls. I also have no idea what I'm saying, and I just rely on the Holy Spirit. All right, Ben, thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. To get an even more meaningful head start into your calling, head to thecalledcareer.com, where my fellow career coach Audrey and I have created a whole suite of free resources and tools to help you get clear and get a job today. For those who are definitely ready to land a job or start a business in the next 6 to 12 months, we're here to help you biblically and practically discern your calling through coaching, reflection, and deep market research. Identify the job that's aligned with it, even if you currently have no idea what you want. Rebrand your resume and LinkedIn to translate your background to appeal to your future boss. P.S. We take this off your plate and do this for you. Also, we'll teach you how to land referrals and get attention from leadership through networking. Again, if that makes you nervous, we have these emails and LinkedIn messages literally written for you so you don't have to sweat. We're also here to give you unlimited interview practice so you're prepared to address every elephant in the room and knock selling yourself out of the park. Then we'll round out with helping you negotiate your salary so you land thousands more. Just so you know, recent clients have gotten $8,000 to $50,000 salary increases, even though they were totally non-traditional candidates. That's because we specialize in helping non-traditional career pivoters land jobs they're ecstatic to serve in. It takes work, but we're here to see you through until the end, when we're celebrating that day that you send me an email in all caps and you say, Kelsey, I got the job. Then you could be on the podcast. But I'll be here until then, keeping you accountable and encouraged by meeting with you literally until you land the job you want, even if that's up to 6 months from now within our program. Apply to join at thecalledcareer.com, and I'll see you next week here at Answer the Call. Bye for now.